sometimes you're always wanting to climb the ladder to get to the next level, and then you realize that you're not really doing the thing you love, which could be designing buildings. You're managing people, you're managing other consultants, you're managing budgets or resourcing on projects, which is a completely different game. So that would be something to consider when you sort of start that journey and you want to look at where you want to go on your career path.
So one really cool thing is that you had designed and modeled the sample house that comes with Revit. So tell us the story of its design. How did that start and how did it evolve?
Subscribe to BlessedArch for your dose of art, architecture and design, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.
Hey yo guys, welcome back to BlessedArch. And before starting today's video, I want to ask one question. Did you know that Autodesk hired architects? To be frank, I didn't. And that is why today's video was so much more special for me. Today, I am in conversation with Sam McAllister. Sam graduated back in 2001 and back then he started working with BIM. Today, he's been working for Autodesk for almost 10 years. In this conversation, he tells us his journey after graduation, how he landed up at Autodesk, what do architects do at Autodesk, and finally, he gives some tips for students and recent graduates. So without taking much of your time, let's get into the conversation. So hey Sam, it's so good to finally connect with you.
Thanks for having me. Big fan of your podcast, and incredible to see how many hits you get, like hundreds of thousands of hits. So feel very fortunate to be participating and helping out in some sort of way.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here. With everything that I do through the interviews, through the channel, it's all about trying to help people. And I think your story would really help them as well. So I've already given them a brief introduction about you. I've told them about everything that you do and about what we're going to discuss today. So let's jump right into our interview. So you graduated back in 2000, and slowly as your career went forward, I see that you started gravitating towards BIM or building information modeling. How mainstream was the idea of BIM back then? And what led you to delve into it?
Yeah, when I was a student, I started in the generation that began on the drawing board and ended up finishing after the 5 years on the computer, doing computer-aided software and using some 3D tools. During my student years, one of the biggest influences that inspired me to actually make the move to 3D was an architect who produced a book called Gyroscopic Horizons, Neil Denari, which is somewhere up here. Big fan of the book back in the mid-90s. I was very impressed by the graphics, what they were able to do with the computers at the time. It was one of those early sort of books or architects starting to use computers as part of their design process and producing really compelling images out of it. When I graduated, what was really helpful was that I had enough experience in AutoCAD to start working on live projects. That was straight away, which was really helpful because a lot of my friends who went to the same practices that I worked at, they were really skilled at model making, good at Photoshop, but they couldn't work on live jobs. So for the first year, I was designing buildings or working on projects, helping design buildings. They were in the model shop room, making models, maybe helping with graphics until they got CAD capable. So that was something that really helped me get an early start when I graduated, was having those computer skills, the right computer skills to help on live projects. In 2001, when I graduated, I was working for an architecture practice in New Zealand called Jasmax Architects. And after a year of working there, working on schools projects, and I had a bit of an opportunity to design some luxury residential houses, I then moved offshore, went to London in 2002. And that's probably another important thing perhaps for students when they graduate. You could probably consider working for practices in other parts of the world or global practices just to get a broader experience. A little bit tougher at the moment to sort of get on a plane and go overseas, but hopefully when we get back to some sort of normality, having that experience in certain practices in the first 5 years, it can really help guide your career as you go forward, because you'll kind of know after working for a variety of different, maybe both larger and small practices, what type of architecture you want to work on. So in London, one of the first companies I got to work for was called R&JM Architects, and I actually joined it on a larger project. So they were doing a university project, and my job was to help put together the packages, doing drawings for output, like setting out partitioning, doing the floor tile layouts, the toilet core layouts. So did 6 months to a year of that, and while I was doing the packages, I was also getting involved in competitions. We got an opportunity to bid for a building information modeling project for the University of Cambridge. Back in the day, like, BIM was not a common word. It had been floating around since maybe the mid-90s, but it was never mainstream. The Medical Research Council wanted this building to be built using building information modeling so they could use it for their facilities management and maintenance. So it was all very new and it was very advanced for the time. What was interesting with this design, working closely with the mechanical engineers on day one using building information modeling, was that they helped influence the design of the architecture. So in the graphics here, we have a screenshot of an AutoCAD architectural desktop model that was provided to us by the mechanical engineers in America, which had two options. And one of them was the traditional option of the services being housed on the roof of the building, and then you'd run ductwork and you'd drop it down to the laboratories, you'd supply gases, then you'd also do your extraction. The other part of the wing that they modeled was actually divorcing the plant from the rooftop of the building and housing it in stacks to the side of the building. So we actually went with housing it on the side of the building because it's more practical to actually service, because you can access more of the components from the sides as opposed to having to get up in cranes or cherry pickers and access the roof. This not only helped with the building information modeling services strategy and facilities management and maintenance, but it also informed the architecture and gave us a better design aesthetic.
Did you have to learn more for this project? And also when you're collaborating with the engineers, did they also need to sort of first get a hang of the software, or did they use it already?
We had the benefit of the mechanical engineers actually, they had used this technology on a project before. So they worked in America and they'd done it before. And we used to jump on meetings with them, remote meetings. I can't remember the technology we used at the time, but we'd have remote meetings and they would guide us through the setup. So that was really helpful, especially when it came to coordination. Having the consultant already use the platform, that really helped us get up and running. This project was started using AutoCAD Architectural Desktop, but finished using Revit. And what we have in the images there is the as-built model created by the contractor who used it as the handover, because it takes so long to get these buildings done. Revit wasn't really mainstream back in 2003, 2004, but as the project developed, it became a lot more apparent that Revit was going to be the key platform to produce the BIM data in. So it was interesting to see that evolve over the years.
One thing that really excited me, and this is one of the reasons I really wanted to interview you, was the fact that you now work at Autodesk. So I'll be honest, I did not know that Autodesk hired architects. So talk to me a little bit about first, how did you land up at Autodesk?
Well, I'd been in London for about 10 years and I was wanting to get back to the Australian New Zealand region. I was pretty fascinated in technology, hence I went down the building information modeling path. And I was looking for a job that combined the two of them. So I didn't know which firm to apply for. There was nothing sort of sticking out to me. But I went to a recruitment agency and was looking on their website, and there was an advertisement for an architect in a technology company. So without even knowing it was Autodesk, I just applied for it because all the words there just ticked the boxes for me. So I applied for it. I had to update my CV very quickly And within 24 hours, I got a call from the recruitment agency wanting to set up an interview with Autodesk. And then from there was several interviews, discussions about relocation. And I think I had a couple of weeks to basically hand in my notice, pack up my life in London after 10 years, and relocate to Sydney, Australia, and start at the beginning in January, at the beginning of the financial year. So it
That's
happened really
crazy.
fast,
Yeah.
but it was very exciting to be given the opportunity. And I've been here almost 10 years, so it's definitely been a fantastic career move for me. And we do have other architects and engineers working in the company as well. So for anybody who is interested in technology and maybe has worked in architecture or wants to come straight from a graduate architect to come work for Autodesk, I believe in the US, there are programs for interns. If you've got experience using our technology or you're passionate about where technology is going, definitely put an application because it's a fantastic company to work for.
So, what does an architect really do at a company like Autodesk?
So originally I joined as what was called a technical account manager. And this is where I was working with a number of key accounts in Australia and New Zealand to help them with the adoption of the technology. We also bundle a lot of our products now into collections. It used to be suites. And not everybody knows about that. Like they know Autodesk sometimes only as AutoCAD. In fact, some customers say, oh, you work for AutoCAD. They're not aware that we have all these other platforms in numerous industries. So one of my jobs was to help customers get the most out of Autodesk technology to help them with the challenges on their projects. Other things that we were doing, we were running events, like local events in Australia and New Zealand, to showcase some of the new technologies to some of our more passionate users. We also do webinars, and we generally try and let customers know when new technology is coming out or if there's new technology that might suit their business. Other employees in the business who might be architects or engineers, they might be working in support, or they could be working in the customer success management team. So they might not necessarily be hands-on with the software, but they might be helping customers with other aspects of the business. So even if you apply and join and get a role at Autodesk, you may have been using the product in the past, but there may be different aspects of the business you might be interested in.
So, one really cool thing is that you had designed and modeled the sample house that comes with Revit. So, tell us the story of its design. How did that start and how did it evolve?
So the sample house originated back in 2012, 2013. It's kind of a case of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I was very fortunate to have a colleague working with me from one of the US offices. So he was working as a structural engineer, and we were talking one day, and he was talking about the other sample model that originally shipped with Revit, and he was wanting to do tests with it, and he said, we need something a bit better. We need something to be updated because I can't keep on using the same one. I put my hand up and said, look, can I design a new model to help you with your demos? And he actually connected me with the Revit team, some of the key people in the Revit team. And we got the ball rolling on a discussion of actually designing a new sample house. Like any architecture project, you're always going to have a client or a structural engineer or somebody you have to work with. So I had to work with several members of the Revit team who were wanting the house to be adjusted or designed in a certain way. I was very keen for a pitch roof. They wanted a mono roof. I wanted sliding doors that protrude on the outside of the building and disappear into cavity walls. In the end, they changed that to curtain walls. So even though I got to design something in the virtual world, which doesn't really have a budget and doesn't really need to be analyzed too much for structural engineering, there was still that challenge of that push and pull, getting the balance, because you've always got to work with somebody.
You still had a client.
You still have a client in some sort of way. You can't please everybody, no doubt. Some people might like this design, others may hate it, but everybody has an opinion. Some people like red, some people like blue. A few things you'll notice were changed when it got released as the sample data set that ships with Revit. Some things I always tried to hold on to as well So even for my student days, and I like things to be divorced from the ground, we had the larger, heavier concrete block item with the bedrooms and the bathrooms floating over a singular monolithic column, and then the lighter elements with the timber cladding sort of pushing out, looking out over the fields. You can still have a bit of fun with these type of designs, bring them across and hopefully share them and help people with their learning process and adoption to the platform.
So let's talk a little bit about BIM. So it is already used in a lot of areas around the world. When we look at 10 years from now, the practice of architecture, what do you think would be the role of building information modeling in it?
Well, now I think we're sort of coming to 20 years of Revit where building information modeling is more or less mainstream. Most firms have moved to it or they're considering moving to it. We're now sort of moving from creating a parametric model which you've got to manually adjust or configure. We're moving into design automation. What we're starting to see is early adopters use generative design for Revit or tools like Dynamo, which allow you to help deliver design options or work with more organic shapes, or even just help with documentation processes with Revit. You can now load in a script from Dynamo into Revit and then run that script and it will do the mundane work for you. So this is really cool because there's a lot of things that take a lot of time to set up, especially when you're wanting to use the information further downstream. Now with this design automation or generative design, it's really going to speed up the next evolution of building information modeling. The other things that it can be used for is at the front end. So this year we just released Generative Design for Revit 2021, where it's for a non-scripting person. They can actually grab a script, a Dynamo script, load it into their database and use it in Revit to do design options for them. So if you're doing things like schools or types of buildings that might have repetitive design tasks or design features, so you may have a certain amount of science blocks, mathematical rooms, you can set that up in the script and hit the generative design button in Revit, and it will go and give you access to parameters you might want to set. So you might want to optimize certain things with the script, or you might want to randomize them. You can set that up without having to be an expert in scripting, and then it will go and run all the options for you on the platform, and then it will allow you to choose the one that you think is best for your project to load into Revit. So it's really cool. I've heard of some of our teams being able to generate up to 10,000 different design options. So pretty impressive. You won't show that to a client, of course, but you've got the ability now to automate some of this work. If I look back at my career in the past, when we didn't have this technology, I was working till 4 in the morning doing design options, and I was having to put them into nice, presentable models to show to the client at 8 a.m. the next morning. Now, you can do this automatically with the platform, and it's only just the beginning. So I think for any students who are graduating and want a career in technology, the generative design technology is probably going to be the next evolution or the next thing that we're migrating from, what Revit used to be when we moved from AutoCAD to BIM. So there's a fantastic opportunity out there for graduates, for younger architects who are comfortable with the technology and maybe want to showcase their skills to work on larger projects or win projects for their firms.
Throughout your journey, as you had this interview, you've given us a lot of advice. But my final question for you would be, is there any one particular thing also, especially that you would like to tell young students or young graduates who are pursuing architecture?
When you graduate, usually for the first 5 years, it's a good idea to work for some different types of firms, try and test what you like, what you don't like, and then try and work out where you want to go in that practice or where you want to go in architecture. I've got several friends who have left architecture. Some went into film and TV. Some are in the manufacturing part of the divisions. I'm in a software company. Keep an open mind to where you want to go, and also try not to be just one-sided. if you are spending all your time in the software and maybe not going to site or not sketching or not conceiving designs, you can get a bit locked into this sort of rut where it can be very repetitive. So it's always good to keep your drawing skills up. I think when you're sitting with a client, sometimes they're probably more impressed to see you sketch than they are to see something done on the computer. When I was working in New Zealand designing luxury homes, I was doing a lot of sketching. I learned how to sketch upside down in perspective for the client at the table. So that was kind of a cool party trick. It helps because a client sees a computer these days and they see all these incredible movies like Avatar, and they think that you just press a button and boom, you've got a 3D model. When you draw for them, they can understand drawing because they try to draw and they can't draw a straight line. When you draw for them in 3D or you sketch upside down or something like that, they can kind of respect it. So I think just keep your drawing skills up. It can be a very quick way to work out maybe parts of your building information modeling detail if you can sketch it. Another thing to consider is making sure you go out to a construction site. It's not for everybody, but it's really good to go and see your building being built, to stand in it as it's being built up. You could also consider possibly even working for a construction company. I know some architects and some talented Revit users who have gone to help construction companies develop the models so it can be developed for things like design for manufacturing and assemblies. So there's all these different options at the front end and the back end of the business which you could consider during your career. Probably the final bit would be to consider where you want to be in an architect's office. Like, do you want to just be working on projects hands-on, or do you aspire to move up to be a principal or a director or a partner, which is very different. Like the partner's job, usually the partner's job is to get out there and find work. And occasionally they'll be traveling or networking, dealing with issues of the business of architecture as opposed to designing. So sometimes when you get to that level, you're not really hands-on with the design. You're sort of reviewing the designs, sketching, making some adjustments, keeping it on track, dealing with 1,000,001 things. So it's probably a good idea to sort of understand where you want to be in the business. I've seen numerous people become partners. Other people will just get to maybe a director role and they're happy being director because they enjoy managing the projects and being part of the projects and dealing with numerous issues on the projects. Some people just want to be on the computers. Some people just go into things like visualization, or they want to be a BIM manager because they really enjoy the technology. So it's kind of good to understand the different levels in an architecture practice or a construction practice or an engineering practice, and then understand what might be best for you, because sometimes you're always wanting to climb the ladder to get to the next level, and then you realize that you're not really doing the thing you love, which could be designing buildings. You're managing people, you're managing other consultants, you're managing budgets or resourcing on projects, which is a completely different game. So that would be something to consider when you sort of start that journey and you want to look at where you want to go on your career path.
Thank you so much, Sam. I think through your journey, we got to learn a lot and understand, you know, how your career moves forward. And I think through, as I interview more and more people, I see different ways, different approaches that people can take. And it's always just about experimenting. And I think your career also tells us that it's experimenting, it's about learning, it's about trying new things. And thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you, my pleasure. And hopefully some of this will be helpful to some of your viewers. And if you ever need me again, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to discuss any other aspects of what architects do in different parts of the business.
And that was it. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this conversation. If you liked it, like it, share it, subscribe. But also, if you do like this conversation and if you can support this channel, you can do so through Patreon. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a patron for this channel, support this channel and get access to so much more content. Even this conversation actually went on much longer, and you can find the bonus clips from this conversation on Patreon. The link to access Patreon can be found in the description below. And that was it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about this video, about any other video that you would like me to create. That is it for this week. I will see you guys next week with another video. Until then, you can just binge watch my channel if you're new here. And bye-bye.